Hey everyone, Cannon here again. For this week's lesson we're going to take a look at chords, and in order to do that we're going to take a look at the jazz standard Autumn Leaves. First I'll show you a quick little arrangement I've put together for it, and then we'll break it down and look at how the chord progression works, how the voicings work, and explain some different ways you can approach it. We'll look at how the melody interacts and how you can use that to create your own melodies and improvisational ideas over progressions like this. Hope you enjoy. Okay, first we'll touch on chord voicings. Now the first part of the progression goes from D minor 7 to G dominant 7, which you might play in a voicing like that, big full one with all the integral tones. However, the way I've got it arranged, and something you'll see in jazz a lot, is letting the bass just worry about the root and not having the root in the guitar voicing, instead just emphasizing the 3rd and 7th. I'm not sure if you can hear the relationship there, but they are ultimately representing the same chords. You have the 7th, the minor 7th of the minor 7 D, and then the minor 3rd. And then with the G dominant 7, you have the major 3rd and the dominant 7. By arranging things like that, you just kind of allow some more space and let the instruments breathe more, and I think it lets them seem like they interact more, since they have to have that relationship for the chords to come out the way they're supposed to. The other thing that you'll notice is that the melody highlights the 3rd and 7th in the same way that the voicings that I'm using does. Again, with this first D minor to G dominant 7 change, the melody goes, so that note is what's being held when that chord change occurs. What that means is that it goes from being the 3rd, the minor 3rd of D minor, to the 7, the dominant 7 of G7. By focusing on those shared chord tones between the changing chords in a progression, you can really add a lot of cohesiveness and just make it sound like you're playing is really following what the rhythm part is doing, instead of just being off on its own and kind of meandering about. It really locks it into what the chords are doing. Next I'll go over the turnaround to show you how that works. It's based off the same kind of 3rd and 7th emphasized voicings that I was showing you before. So I'll show you how it sounds with big pretty full chords. We have an A minor 7, a D7, a G minor 7, and a C7, and then an F7, and an E7, and then resolve to the A minor 7. To play what I just played in the way I've arranged it, it's much less pretty on its own. We have A minor 7, D7, G minor 7, C7, F7, E7, and A minor 7. Again, we're just emphasizing certain chord tones rather than the whole chord. Again, we'll take a look at the melody that goes over top of the chords that we just looked at. This part again has an emphasis on the common shared tones between the chords. The melody actually just holds a E for the first few chords. as the A minor 7, D7, and G minor 7 go Now that E, yes, is not technically in G minor 7, but by acting as the ninth, it kind of gives it a suspended feel. One of the neat things you might notice about this progression is that it moves in fifths, at least in the beginning. It goes from D to G, C to F, B to E, and then A. That kind of shared interval in the movement is one of the things that makes it such a nice, flowing, natural progression. Another thing I should touch on is inversions. What that basically means is stacking the notes, the tones in a chord in a different way. So starting off with the root position, we have just that root in the bass. Root, third, fifth, root. In the first inversion, the third becomes the bass of the chord. So we end up with third, fifth, root, third. And then in the second version, it follows that the fifth becomes the bass of the chord. And then back to the root position. Now, just like I touched on using sparser chord voicings in order to highlight just third and seventh and create more space in the arrangement, you can also use different inversions to make things sound bigger. Instead of having two parts playing the exact same voicing of a chord, for example, both this C down here, you could have one part play that voicing, and another part come up here to play this voicing. Even if it's on the same guitar and being played by the same person, just doing different takes for a recording, it'll make a difference because you're playing it in different parts of the neck and different way just by the fact that it's a different take. This is great for live too. Often if I'm playing out and there's another guitar player that's covering the basic power chords, I will take the opportunity to come up to the higher octave and hang out up there and add some little frilly higher chord voicings. All sorts of fun you can have while creating a more expansive sound with chord voicings like this. Applying chord tones in your improvisation can make it sound like you really know what you're doing more than you might actually, because you're emphasizing the strong tones that are being played. A good way to practice that is to just force yourself to only use chord tones. If it means that you have to play just quarter notes and can't improvise and can't do all the faster licks you might normally play, then so be it. Force yourself to just play chord tones and think intimately about the chord progression you're playing over. If you can learn to be aware of that, then you'll find that even when you're playing things that don't require strict chord tone based playing, you can work in a lot of really cool ideas that follow the progression intimately and still add your own flavor, your own outside notes, or your own modal choices, any of that. You can add a lot, but it's really nice to be able to have that home base of chord tone based playing. I'll do a quick improvisation over the beginning of the progression so you can hear how highlighting chord tones, like I was talking about, can give a very, very strong picture of the underlying progression, even without accompaniment. Okay, that should just about wrap things up for this week's lesson on chords then. I hope I was able to show you some of how Autumn Leaves works and the mechanisms that make that sound the way it does. I hope I was able to give you some ideas on how you can arrange things a little bit differently than you might normally to give things a different sound, how to use different inversions and different voicings to create those textures. And as always, I hope you had fun. Thanks again.